Hello and welcome to another episode of The Mark Moss Show. Of course, we talk about the decentralized revolution, talking about the way the world is changing rapidly. Of course, the world we're going into is not the same as the one we're leaving behind, and we look at it through the lens of politics, finance, and technology. Of course, that technology is Bitcoin. It's the decentralized technology. It's the technology that's always changing the world. And so we look at those three so you can have context to how we got here, what is going on, and of course, most importantly, what should always be at the front of your mind is what comes next. And we want to know what comes next so we know how to navigate it, how to position ourselves to protect ourselves, but also to set ourselves up. The world's scary because it's changing. You don't know what's on the other side. Well, we kind of have an idea if you study history, and of course, you tune into the Mark Moss Show on a weekly basis. So if you haven't already, and of course you're not driving, pull your phone out, put a little calendar reminder in to be with me on the same time at the same channel each and every week. And if you miss me, don't worry, I got you covered. You can catch me on your favorite podcast player, the iHeart music app or any other app. Just search the Mark Moss Show. Or if you'd like to watch me, you can also see me on YouTube. Just search for the Market Disruptors YouTube channel, and you can watch me there. But I'm trying to help you make sense of the world and navigate what's going on. Now, I recently had a guest on this show, if you caught it, Ryan Daniel Moran, and it's an interesting listen. A lot of you had a problem with it, had a hard time listening to it. A lot of you thought he was very naive. I would agree. To me, he seems to have his head in the sand. And if he's listening, I'll say it again. He seems to have his head in the sand. And the reason why I say that is because he said over and over, as soon as that happens, then I'll deal with it. He said it over and over. I said, well, look, the COP26 had this meeting. They said this is what they're doing. He said, well, when that happens, I'll deal with it. The problem is the old adage, if you grew up around a farm, it's like closing the barn door after the cows are gone, right? You're supposed to close the barn door before the cows leave. So he's saying, look, when it happens, I'll deal with it. At that point, it's too late. You probably lost your wealth, maybe lost your freedom. And so we're trying to help you protect from that. So we look for the signs. What is going to happen? And of course, what better place to look for the signs than to the ones who are making the laws and the policies and the regulations? Because the regulations, the laws, the policies tell us what's going to happen. They literally make a regulation or a law telling us what we can do. So for example, when they pass a law or a regulation saying that by 2030, there will be no more gas-powered cars being sold, okay, well then they probably mean by 2030 there won't be any. So we should be preparing for that. What would we do? Well, maybe you'd want to think about buying stock in electric vehicles or charging companies or copper, right? Maybe you would not want to own stock in gas combustion vehicles or technologies. That's an example. For him or anyone else to sit back and go, well, when it happens, I'll deal with it. It's like, they just told us what they were going to do. It's like, if I told you, hey, in 5 seconds, I'm going to punch you in the face, and you're like, well, when it happens, I'll deal with it. Like, why wouldn't you just move right now? Like, when you see there's a Cat 5 hurricane heading for your town, the smart people get on a plane and leave. The other smart people will at least board up their windows. What we saw recently when it happened in Florida, a lot of smart people they weren't smart, they didn't leave. And I saw videos that showed up on the internet of people in their homes filling up with water and floating down the street. And so you see a Cat 5 hurricane coming and you do something about it, right? You make sure you have insurance on your home. You make sure it's boarded up, and you probably go somewhere else. And so anyway, we can see this storm, this Cat 5 storm that's coming for us, and I think we should know. So this week, the World Economic Forum, they got together, had a big meeting, and this is the most powerful and the most influential people in the world. All get together, they fly their private jets over to Davos, Switzerland, a ski town, and they get together to plot and plan, or another word for it would be conspire. There's no such thing as conspiracy, Mark. You're a conspiracy theorist. No, we all conspire. My wife and I conspire all the time about our kids. My team, we conspire about what we want to do with our products and with the customers. Everyone is conspiring. They are getting together and they're planning, they're plotting, they're conspiring what they want to do. Now, it's not really conspiring, to be honest with you, I guess if we look at the technical definition of the word, because I believe conspire let's see. I should have looked it up. The definition of conspiracy is an agreement to perform together a subversive act. It's a group of conspirators, or I like this one, agreement between two or more people to accomplish a legal purpose through illegal action. So they're saying the conspiracy is through illegal purposes. I don't remember if the definition always said that. There's probably other definitions here. Doesn't really matter for the purpose of what we're doing or what we're talking about. So it's not really a conspiracy either way because it's not in secret. They openly publish documents telling you what they're going to do. They write books and they tell you what they're going to do, and it's all on the website. So it's definitely not a conspiracy. And so for me to reiterate what they're saying is not a conspiracy theory. I'm just reciting what they're saying. And so I would recommend that you go to the source, and if you don't believe me, hopefully I create a little bit of curiosity and go fact check me. Don't believe me. Don't believe anybody. Go fact check me. Go read their book. Go read their website. So anyway, if you're short on time, let me tell you what they said. So a couple of big things happened that you need to know about. Big things. Now, I say it all the time. You've heard me over and over and over like a broken record. Henry Kissinger told us, control the food, you control the people. Control the energy, you control the continent. Control the money, you control the world. And so the money is what controls the world. It's what organized the world. Having the US dollar as the reserve system, the reserve currency of the world, has created this global payment network that's created global trade, which created global cooperation and global supply chains. And it's been amazing for the last 50 years. But this is all starting to change. This period of global peace and prosperity and free trade is changing. And I've been talking about this for a long time. That's why I talk about the decentralized revolution. Now, one of the economic analyst, a former New York Fed, Zoltan Poszar. He's been writing a series of articles over the last year or so that really kind of echoes the sentiment of what I'm talking about, how the world is breaking apart. He does it through an economic lens, and that's because, again, control the money, control the world, and that's what's kept us together. And he talks about how now that the money is breaking down, how the world is going to break down. He put out a recent piece. He's put out a series of pieces. He talked about how the world's going into what he calls a Bretton Woods 3. So Bretton Woods 1 was in 1944. The entire world got together and agreed to create a new monetary system, and that was the dollar being the reserve system of the world, which was a gold-backed currency. That was Bretton Woods 1. That was 1944. Unofficially, he says that Bretton Woods 2, or a new agreement, was made in 1971 when President Richard Nixon decided to take the dollar off of the gold standard and we went into a fiat money system, meaning there's nothing backing the dollars. It's not backed by commodity. It's just a free-floating currency. Fiat is by decree. It has value because we say it does, or what he calls it is inside money. And the inside money, meaning that it's controlled on a ledger, a digital ledger that the insiders control. Who are these insiders? It's the bankers at the Fed and the politicians at the government of the U.S. So they control this inside money. The problem is they control the ledger, they control your bank account. And so if you're like Afghanistan, the central bank of Afghanistan, you just had your bank account seized. And it was about $8 billion just gone. All the people in Afghanistan had their money in the bank. Sorry, your money's gone too, because it wasn't your money. It was inside their system. And now Zoltan Poszar has been calling for a Bretton Woods 3, which is a abandoning of this Bretton Woods 2 inside money, fiat money system, and a new money system, which is Bretton Woods 3, which is an outside money or a commodity-based money. We've been witnessing this for a long time, and this isn't. None of these things are events. So a lot of times when I talk about this, the death of the dollar's going out, a new currency, a new monetary system, everybody wants to know when will it happen? When will it happen? It's not an event, it's a process. When the dollar took over being the reserve currency of the world, it was the pound before the dollar. But it wasn't an event, it was about a 30-year process that it happens. So these are processes, and it's maybe a gradually, then suddenly type of event. And so we've been witnessing the dollar losing its relevancy for a long period of time. We've seen the dollar-denominated settlements, so the amount of dollars being used in global settlements has been going down for a long time. We've seen Russia and China talking about de-dollarizing, getting off of the dollar standard for a long time. We've seen the IMF, which is like the central bank above the central banks. They run something called an SDR, a special drawing rights, and it's a basket of other fiat currencies. And the dollar used to make up the big majority of that, and it's began losing share of that basket, of that SDR basket. So we've seen the dollar, slowly losing. China, which is China and Japan are the two largest holders of U.S. debt, of treasuries, over $1 trillion each. And they've been de-dollarizing their holdings. And especially once what happened to Russia happened, China's like, wait a minute, we probably don't want to be holding all these dollars if the U.S. can just seize them. And so they've been working to get rid of those and protect themselves from this. And so this has been happening. This is what Poszar's talking about, this shift to now get out of the inside money and back to a commodity-based money. A commodity would be oil, gas, gold, physical things that can't be controlled. If I have the gold, no one's going to take my gold unless, they come attack me. And so that's what happened. But this has really been sped up. So Zoltan Poszar wrote this new piece, potentially one of his most important reports, and he talked about how Putin, from Russia, Putin would unleash hell. He would break down the entire Western financial system by demanding that people pay for the oil and gas that they're buying from Russia in gold. So because of all the Western sanctions against Russia, Russia's still selling their gas and oil, but because of the sanctions, they're not selling them in dollars. They can't have dollars, so they've been selling them in ruble. But if he were to say, hey, we'll sell it to you, but we're going to peg oil to gold, it would effectively launch what we would call the petro-gold. Now, petro-gold is really coming from the petrodollar. And so what a lot of people don't understand, in just a little bit of history, is 1971, the dollar lost its peg to gold. And I believe in 1974, 3 years later, they created the petrodollar, which meant it was an agreement with Saudi Arabia and the U.S. that all oil would be priced in dollars. So dollars would be the unit of account for the whole world, and anybody that wanted energy, which is everybody, would have to pay for them in dollars. And so they're saying that if Russia could say, hey, now if you still want our oil and gold or oil and gas, that's fine, but we're pegging it to gold, then instead of the petrodollar, it would be petro-gold. Petroleum, oil, would be pegged to the price of gold. And so Poszar basically laid that out, said if Putin did this, it would have massive implications. And then it seemed to happen. China's President Xi went to visit Saudi Arabia. Remember, Saudi Arabia has the deal with the U.S. to protect the dollar, the petrodollar. But now President Xi from China went to visit Saudi, and it marked the birth of what they're calling a petro-yuan, China's currency. Now, this is a big, big, big deal. China can now claim to have built a special relationship with not just OPEC, but OPEC Plus, which includes Russia and Iran. Now, Zoltan basically in his paper urged anybody reading it to think about how this fits together and the timing of these statements by President Xi from a political viewpoint. If you put on this diplomatic or political lens. And he said, quote, President Xi communicated his message on renminbi invoicing not during the first day of his visit, but when he met only the Saudi leadership, but during the second day of his visit, when he met the leadership of all the GCC countries to signal the following, that GCC oil flowing east plus renminbi invoicing equals the dawn of the petro-yuan. And so we've continued to see the dollar get hammered, lose its relevance, lose its market share. The one thing that's kind of kept it hanging into its power of balance is the fact that it's pegged to oil, the petrodollar. But now the petrodollar has been threatened and we have the petro-yuan. And that's a big deal. The last thing that was potentially holding it on. And this just continues to fragment the world. All right. So what we're witnessing, and again, I say it at the beginning and end of every single show, it's the decentralized revolution. The world is going from a world of centralization to decentralization. Now, it's important because the WEF, the World Economic Forum, has been meeting this week in Davos, and it's all about globalism, trying to get one world government. So if they're pushing to get this one world government, how could me, Mark Moss, on the Mark Moss Show, talk about the world going into decentralization? Because that's not what the WEF wants, right? Certainly not. But that's exactly what's happening. And we can see it all over the place, like with the money supply breaking down. There was an article I saw that came out this week that talked about the fragmented world and it's how it's sleepwalking into World War III. This is a big deal because as the world continues to break apart, agitation runs high, risks run high, and instead of global cooperation, you get global coercion, manipulation, and potentially even war. Now, at the WEF, the World Economic Forum, we had the self-appointed elites that were all there. And Klaus Schwab, the ringleader, the mastermind of the World Economic Forum, he was talking about the need for, quote, cooperation in a fragmented world. That's what he was talking about. Now, what does that mean? Cooperation in a fragmented world. So he wants a world of globalism where one group of unelected leaders control the world. But when the world's breaking apart and doesn't want to participate in that, how does he achieve that? Which of course he doesn't, but he's still trying to, which is what he's calling for. At least can we have cooperation in a fragmented world? Good luck with that. He says that, quote, the most critical fragmentation is that we're going through right now is mired in problems as all of these tensions rise from these countries each looking out for themselves. And he says that it's very important that we work. President Macron of France got together and said it's very important that we have one world government because we have to save the world. If we don't have one government, how will the world cooperate? Which it won't. And so how will we get this green sustainable economy? Which is you can't. A green sustainable economy for the world. Now, if you're in, the developed world, if you're in Canada, Australia, Europe, or the United States, your quality of life is pretty good. But if you're like the majority of the world, your quality of life maybe isn't so good. About half the world lives on less than $5 a day. Half the world. We're talking about 4 billion people live on less than $5 a day. 3/4 of the world lives on less than $10 a day. How's their quality of life? I don't know where you live, but for me to go out to lunch is like $20 for lunch. They're living on 75% of the world lives on less than $10 a day. So their quality of life is not very good. And for them to sit back and think about these elites flying on their private jets to go to Davos, talking about this green sustainable economy where we should have less energy, where their babies die every single day because they don't have electricity for an incubator or a sonogram or whatever, and they're going to hear these elites saying that we need to use less energy, I don't think they're going to go along with that. I don't think they're okay saying, yeah, we'll just be more poor, and yeah, we should just never get energy, and yeah, we'll just continue to live in the dark ages with sticks and huts. I don't think that 3/4 of the world's population is okay with that. And I think it's showing. We can see that these leaders in Davos have had to shift their narrative, and it's something I want to talk about. Of course, we've talked about the Great Reset, which this video will end up on YouTube, on my Market Disruptors channel, by the way. Just check it out on YouTube, Market Disruptors. And there will probably be a little warning under there saying that the Great Reset is taken out of context and it's a conspiracy. No, it's not. Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum wrote the book. The title is The Great Reset. So YouTube can give you all the little warnings you want. He wrote the book. Why would they be trying to hide from that? They ran the campaign that you'll own nothing and be happy. They wrote the book, The Great Reset. Public opinion doesn't like that. Turns out most people don't want to own nothing. They don't think they'll be happy. And so this year at the World Economic Forum, they decided to change that. Now there's a new mantra. They're calling it, quote, the new system. No more the Great Reset. People didn't like the Great Reset, we'll just call it the new system. It's good marketing, it's good branding. It doesn't change the fact of what they're trying to do. They've been talking about this moment that's most likely going to happen, and we may not be prepared for it, called the polycrisis. A polycrisis. In perfect English, that could be like a perfect storm of all these different global risks coming together. And so that is what is happening. At the event, Klaus Schwab called for people to, quote, master the future. And so this group of people, these unelected leaders, these rich, these elite that are out of touch, that flew on their private jets, they are coming together to master the future, to confront all these crises that are going to happen, and they need to proactively work and put measures in place to protect us. Crises like what, you might ask? Well, apparently we're going to have like a really bad cyber pandemic, which maybe we're already having. We'll talk about that. Apparently we're having another pandemic. One of the talks was that we need to be ready for the next pandemic. Okay, so they want to preemptively be ready for these, or I guess let them all happen at one time so they can have this polycrisis. And it goes back to, was it Emmanuel? What was his name? Emmanuel. He said, never let a crisis go to waste. And so, one of the ways, and Klaus Schwab said it, one of the ways that we can affect real change or push real change is through a crisis, because in a time of fear, people are willing to accept anything in order to get past that fear. And so if we create this crisis all the time, hey, you're about to get wiped out from a cyber pandemic or a health pandemic or a financial crisis, or you name it, fill in the blank, then you're going to be looking for someone to come solve that problem and cure your fear is what's going on. Now, one of the other things that they talked about this week was, of course, the elite's obsession with achieving total financial control. Now, of course, I talk about this all the time, right? Control the food, control the energy, and control the money. And so they had a lot to say this week at the financial conference, the World Economic Forum, about the central bank digital currencies and how they could control the populace if they can control the money. Now, of course, they didn't use the word control the people that way. They more talked about it in a sense of they could control the bad actors. And they could keep us all safe from, things like terrorism. Because if they could just see every single financial transaction that you do, then they could potentially keep us safe. Seems like no matter what plan they come up with, whether it's to save the environment or save the economy or to save the internet or to save the money, you name it, fill in the blank, save whatever. In order to save whatever, we all have to give up more of our individualism, our autonomy, and our freedom. Funny how that works. None of it gives us back more of what it is that we actually want. I saw this other article. They were talking about how at the World Economic Forum in Davos, they called themselves, quote, the select human beings. Select human beings. And so the thing is, you have to keep in mind is that they know better than you. You're dumb, you're stupid, you can't think for yourself. And so you need people like this who are smarter than you, they're better looking than you, they're richer than you, and you need them to tell you what to do. They call themselves, quote, select human beings. And we just see just so much of this stuff, and that's why I like to tell you exactly what they're saying. We saw, Brian Stelter sitting down with, who is this? The head of the European Union, talking about, here it is, the European Commissioner, VP Vera Jourova. She's at the WWF saying that illegal hate speech, which you will have soon also in the US, I think that we have a strong reason why we have this in the criminal law. So what she was saying, she's sitting down with Brian Stelter, who's supposed to be a journalist, which should be asking questions, hard-hitting questions that you may want to know, and she's telling him that the U.S. is going to have laws very soon about illegal hate speech. Something I talk about all the time is that we, you and I, we should all, as individuals, we should all be working to build the world that we want. There's a saying that I love that says that you can either build the life of your dreams or someone else can hire you to build the life of their dreams. And so that's kind of what this is, right? It's like Either you can build the life that you want, you can build the world that you want, or someone else will build it for you. Like I said, Klaus Schwab, who's head of the World Economic Forum, called for people to, quote, master the future. And so these people have gotten together to create a plan for your future. Now, they didn't ask you what you wanted. They don't even care. They didn't even take that into consideration. And so you can either just take it or you can do something about it. One of the things that I love that I'm seeing, though, is that because there are a lot of people just like you listening to this, waking up, not just listening to this, waking up, but pushing back on this. We're spreading this information around, so more people are waking up to their plans. It's made them look bad, and they don't like that. And now they have a problem with that. As a matter of fact, the World Economic Forum this week, when they were meeting, said that they want to now fight back. They said they challenged everybody at the WEF meeting. We need to fight back. We're under attack, they said. We're under attack by conspiracy theorists who say that, that we're trying to seek global domination through the Great Reset. That's wrong. We never said that. They're attacking us. They're spreading misinformation. But wait, Klaus wrote the book called The Great Reset. How is that misinformation? They say that when you say own nothing to be happy, they put out this whole article this week that they didn't say that, and all that originated through this this underground website called 4chan, which is this like decentralized web where supposedly all these conspiracy theories sprout from. And so it was 4chan that basically came up with that headline and pushed that. It's all misinformation. It's disinformation meant to discredit the WEF. Well, that's not true. Welcome to on the WEF's own website, they published an article where that came from. And the article starts out by saying, quote, "Welcome to 2030." And it was written by a member of the Danish Member of Parliament, Ida Auken, who is now one of the main people at the WEF. So it was not only written by a member of Danish Parliament, who's now one of the top people at the WEF, it was published on their website. It didn't come from 4chan. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because they say they're under attack of misinformation. And they want to pass new laws to prevent hate speech and misinformation. The problem is, they're the ones spreading it. The article was written by one of their main members and published on their website. That's where it came from. That's the truth. There's facts. There's documents to back that up. They can delete the article all they want, but the Wayback Machine, the web archive, show that it was published on their website. Now they're saying it's misinformation. It came from this 4chan website, which is obviously wrong. They want to say that these are conspiracy theorists saying this, but how is it a conspiracy when it's out in the open? How is it a conspiracy when Davos, the meeting in Davos, is one of the most heavily publicized events in the world? Right? Now, we do know that there's secrets that they don't want out. And this is one of the threads that I want to pull on a little bit, because supposedly, not just the WEF, but of course your government, whatever government that may be, in the United States and Canada and Australia and Europe, especially in Canada, Australia and Europe, but in the United States as well, they're telling us that we need to be willing to give up some of our freedom of speech, because one of the greatest threats we face is misinformation. All of these people saying these wrong things, and you and I were too stupid to know the difference, and so they must protect us from that. But one of the reasons why potentially misinformation could spread is because there's a lack of transparency, right? When you hide the truth, then people are left to wonder, right? I've used this example many times, so if you're a regular listener, thank you for listening, and excuse me for using the same example over, but if you had a business partner who you thought was embezzling from you, and you're like, hey, could we look at this bank statement? Because I don't know what this charges are. And he said, oh, that's nothing. I don't have time for this. Oh, by the way, check this out. No, I got to go. Like, that would lead to like more suspicion. And then he would leave the office, and then your mind would start going crazy. And then next thing you know, you probably think the worst. And it's because he didn't come clean. He didn't show transparency. He didn't tell the truth. The truth gets rid of that. But when they hide the truth, when they are constantly caught in lies, what are we supposed to do? And so that's how misinformation spreads. So if they really cared about misinformation, they'd be honest. They'd be transparent. They wouldn't be like World Economic Forum saying that Own Nothing to Be Happy was created by these right-wing extremists in these 4chan boards when it actually started from an article they wrote and put on their website. But of course, the WEF doesn't have any type of transparency. They don't have any type of disclosure. As a matter of fact, they are so secretive. Of course, we know that they're at their events, and of course, we see what comes out that they want us to see. And it's bad. It's really bad. Now, imagine what we don't see. Imagine how much worse that is. We know that they've also proven to be highly secretive. As a matter of fact, on one side of their mouth, they're urging all these corporations to publicly disclose all their information on all their most sensitive information, not just on their finances, but from their manufacturing process and their procurement, and how do they hire, and how do they manage, and what are their human resources like, what are their emissions like, what are they doing to mitigate, all of these things. Not only are they looking for all this transparency, but what about their transparency? When the public asked WF founder Klaus Schwab how you invest, what do you do with the foundation's money? Where does it go? How much do you have? How do you invest it? Are you investing into ESG things? What do you think they have to say? Do you think there's any transparency? He noted, Klaus Schwab noted that the foundation differs from the WEF and added that, quote, Swiss law does not require financial reporting for foundations, end quote. So, how do you end this misinformation? You be transparent. He's urging everyone else to be transparent. Why wouldn't you say, oh, okay, here's our money, here's how much we have, and here's how we have invested? That would stop it. That would stop the speculation. But of course, they don't give you even the minimal amount of transparency, which of course is by design. But I want to go back to this master the future. Like I said, they have a plan to master your future. But do you have a plan to master your future? As big and as bold and as scary as these visions of the world that they have for us are, the reality is, for most of us, it won't really affect us that much. And so I want to kind of just transition here for a minute, because I get a lot of your comments. I see them online. I see the defeatist. I see the defeated attitude. I see the demoralized attitudes. I see the comments that say, oh, Klaus Schwab and the central bankers and these elites, they have so much control. What chance do I have? But you have a lot of power. You have a lot of control. I live in California. People say, oh, you're in California. Why would you be in California? Which is true. You look at what Governor Gavin Newsom has done, the restrictions they put in place, the high taxes, what they've done with the schools, all these different things that you could point to. It is sort of like California. The reality is, though, it doesn't really affect my life day to day. Now, that's in California. You can get to much more rural areas. What about in Oklahoma or North Dakota, in Middle America, flyover states, right? What about in other countries like Mexico or Central America? I can tell you that there's places that no matter how strict they want to be, they just don't have the manpower to enforce this. And so while these things are scary and they're doing these things, the reality is they're not really affecting or holding us back. So stop playing the victim. There's nothing holding you back. Now, the direction the world is going is scary, I'll give you that. But there's nothing holding you back from changing your life for the better right now, today. And it starts with one step. Change your mindset. If you're just tuning in and listening to the Mark Moss Show, we're talking about the decentralized revolution. We are kind of wrapping up what the WEF was talking about this week. But you have the power and control. So hopefully that's the motivation for you. That's what I got for you today. Thanks for listening.